like all the cables are out of the way. The only thing I can't tell you is the standard definition camera lens shroud is close to the base of the, I guess where the pan tilt unit meets the flange for the lower housing.
Copy, checking.
Are you getting some?
We are. We're getting great WVSU. Just checking 1 minute.
So new eyes on the International Space Station as the newly installed camera on the Port 1 lower outboard area of the truss is up and running. A good view of Randy Bresnik through that new camera, which also now has a new standard definition camera as well as a reinstalled high definition camera at its disposal.
And we actually got an excellent shot of you from CP9, so we'll get that tape back to you later. You look awesome. Thanks very much for your work out there, and we can have you head back to the APFR and bundle your medium ORU bag.
TV1.
All right, Mark, back to you. I saw you prepping the grease gun, and let me know.
While Bresnik completed work to free up that pan and tilt unit capability for the newly installed camera, Mark Vandehei is practicing the application of grease onto a special tool called a BLT. It's not a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. It's a ball screw lubrication tool that he will use to lubricate a central ball screw in the initial phase of the lubrication of the newly installed latching end effector at the end of the station's robotic arm.
Definitely all the joints.
So, comrade, you can stow the scoop back in the medium ORU bag and then bundle crew lock bag number 3 into the medium ORU bag.
Go. Can I put the scoop in the crew lock bag 3?
That works too. We copy the config.
Excellent.
All right, hi guys, if you're joining us on Fox 5 Live, welcome to the Fox 5 DC Digital Newsroom. You're looking at a live spacewalk outside the International Space Station. We're going to have some of our sources switching around today, but for now we have this feed live from NASA. Super cool stuff that we try to bring you when we have it. Just being mindful of some of the noise around us. That's our Fox box telling us what other sources are coming in. We're going to be getting a couple visits from some people in the newsroom to talk about a lot of different things today. White House press briefing. We have the Stanley Cup champions Penguins visiting the White House later this afternoon. So we'll be chatting about that in a little bit. And also bringing you continued coverage of the wildfires that have been spreading through, more than a dozen of them spreading through Northern California, Napa Sonoma counties. And I believe the stat on that is that at least 10 people have died, more than 100 evacuated. So more on that when we have some of those sources coming in, guys. But for now, check into this live spacewalk from the space station.
Nice work. Then you can apply the grease on the BLT. And you're going to do 2 zigzag lines of grease across the cradle.
Yeah. Keep the valve scoop right back in the medium or U bag anyway, just to keep the tether count right.
Copy, back in the medium or U bag.
LT is well greased.
Excellent. We saw that. Looks good. You can save the grease gun. Let me know if you need steps.
Got the grease gun restraint. The flow is off. The restraint is back in place. The arrow is downward. And I'm assuming I need to clean it before I put the cap on. Is that true?
Affirmative. Wipe the nozzle, and you can start on the inside of your EVA wipe. Start on the very deepest part of the EVA wipe, and then work outward.
Copy.
All right, guys, you're continuously watching here this ISS spacewalk coming in live from NASA, but we're going to switch it up and go over to a source that we just got in. First Lady Melania Trump participating in a roundtable discussing the opioid crisis. I just saw Kellyanne Conway there, so they're getting the camera kind of set up. We're going to jump over there in just a second. Thanks for joining us today on our stream. Feel free to chat with us on a live chat and let us know where you're watching from. We're going to be in the newsroom for a couple hours here in the middle of the day to bring you the best sources that we got. So jumping over now to this roundtable. I'm not quite sure where she is, but we're going to find out some more for you and go to this Melania Trump event and then take it back into the newsroom in a bit.
What the hell was I thinking?
Nick and Joe Acaba, and we'll begin to lubricate at least the first 2 of 4 latch ball screws. These are ball screws that operate the various latches and the snaring mechanism in the latching end effector at the end of the station's robotic arm.
10 centimeters. RGCA.
Copy. We're going to give you a port.
Copy.
And say, well, these are small corrections, so just let us know if you need more.
All right. What's all right, that sounds good. Did you already do that correction?
We put in, you know, those 10 centimeters. Like I said, it's going to seem small, so we can give you more if you'd like.
All right, sounds good. How about another 10?
We'll keep them coming.
Just one more 10, and that'll be more than enough, probably. And actually, stop motion?
And we have stop motion there. Let us know how it looks.
So, it just occurred to me that what I was going to do was work on the port side latch, which would be the second one. Right. That's the position I'm looking at as a work position. By doing that, I moved the lead towards my greasy bag. So what I'm thinking I need to do is move in the opposite direction, station starboard, work on the side of the lead closest to me, but most of the lead away from the bag.
Okay, we can do that. So we're going to go back starboard, and we'll get you back to where we started, and then take you another 10 or 20 if you'd like that.
Please. Motion.
Motion.
If you want to retrieve my green hook, you'll see the cart.
Copy.
It's perfect timing with the sun going down. I'll be able to see inside there better, I suspect.
Okay, how do you like that?
And you do a body yaw, using my frame of reference. Yaw left.
And are you looking at rolling, or what are you trying to get?
So what I need to do is have I need to get not rolling. I need to get I want to get an angle on the end of the arm, on the end of the lead, so that I can look straight down, have my arm come in from an angle. I'm going to use my right arm. But basically, I need to get latch number 4 to rotate towards my right shoulder. For my reference frame would be a yaw. It would be like me twisting. I'll try it, then I'll just tell you if I need the opposite.
Sounds like a great plan. Here it comes. Arms in motion.
Yeah, that looks like a pitch to me. That's not what I need. So take that out and give me a perpendicular orientation change.
Okay, Mark, here it comes.
Motion.
Copy, good motion.
This is the view from the newly installed camera Port 9 camera group. A good view of Mark Vandehei. And just at the top of your screen is the new latching end effector at the end of the Canadarm2 robotic arm.
My reference frame, it would look like a pitch down. I need to move the forward face, the face of the arm towards my head.
Vandehei directing arm operator Joe Acaba to fine-tune the position as he prepares for some get-ahead work to begin lubricating at least the first 2 of 4 latching ball screws in the latching end effector mechanism.
Continue.
This made available to Vandehei thanks to swift work he made of 3 applications of brake coat grease to a central ball screw as the first task of this lubrication work planned to span not only today but the 3rd spacewalk next week that Bresnik will conduct with Joe Acaba.
Motion.
Copy, motion.
Nice work. Okay, do we need to start with latch number 1 or it doesn't matter?
Any latch you'd like.
Okay, I'm going to go for latch 4.
Okay, copy, latch
So if
4.
you're calling that GCA complete?
I am now, Joe. Calling that GCA complete.
Okay, copy.
Thanks for double checking.
And Sable Comrade, just off your right wing.
Companies are not leaving so much now because we have them coming back. You see what happens. You see the announcements from companies building car plants now in Michigan. They're going to various different states. They're actually picking some additional locations. But just last week, 5 plants announced that they're going to build in this country. But I will say that we're the highest tax nation in the world. People want to see massive tax cuts. I'm giving the largest tax cuts in the history of this country. In addition to that, there'll be reform. So I think that it's politically, it's very positive. The people of the country want it. We're also bringing back $3 trillion from offshore. That's money that's been there for years, that wants to come back into the country, but the tax situation didn't allow it to happen, and the bureaucracy. And that's going to come back as part of the deal. $3 trillion, it could even be more than that. People want to see tax cuts, they want to see major reductions in their taxes, and they want to see tax reform, and that's what we're doing. And we'll be adjusting a little bit over the next few weeks to make it even stronger. But I will tell you that it's become very, very popular. And I'll also be signing something probably this week, which is going to go a long way to take care of many of the people that have been so badly hurt on health care. And they'll be able to buy, they'll be able to cross state lines, and they will get great competitive health care, and it will cost the United States nothing. Take care of a big percentage of the people we're talking about, too. So with Congress the way it is, I decided to take it upon myself. So we'll be announcing that soon as far as the signing is concerned. But it's largely worked out it's very simple in one way, but very intricate in another. But it will be great, great health care for many, many people. A big percentage of the number of people that we were talking about for failed Obamacare. Now, we're going to have to do something with Obamacare because it's failing. Henry Kissinger does not want to pay 116% increase in his premiums, but that's what's happening. and it's actually getting worse. It's getting worse by the minute. So we're going to have to do something with Obamacare, and that will work out. But very importantly, a big percentage of people will be able to get health care, and they'll be able to go across state lines. They'll be able to buy from many, many competitors, and meaning the insurance companies, and it will not cost our country anything, but they'll have great, great health insurance again.
Did you undercut the Secretary of State today with the IQ comment?
No, I didn't undercut anybody. I don't believe in undercutting people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Open the door. Officers in the front, can you open the door?
Thank you.
You want to head down the diagonal braces on the way to the forward side of ESP2?
And sorry, comrades, say again, we didn't copy that.
Latches are extended.
Say again, we didn't copy that.
EB1 is head down the diagonal braces to the left, then down the gap spanners to the forward side of ESP2.
And we're checking down here, comrade.
Sabo, latches are extended.
Copy, Joe. Latches are extended. Kate, I'm going to use that as a go to cue my dry runs.
Affirmative, and let me know if you need steps, Sabo. And comrade, you're good with that translation pass.
As I get to the right depth, I have to make...
You're good with that translation pass.
Say again, I didn't understand you.
For comrade, we're good with that translation path to ESP2.
Firearm, correct?
Mine. I've liked him, I've respected him, but we've been friends for a long time, long before my emergence into the world of politics, which has not been too long. But we have been really, I guess you'd say, the New York scene a little bit, but we got to know each other very well. He's a man I have great, great respect for. He's also somebody, usually I say, have you ever been in the Oval Office? And with Henry Kissinger, I didn't bother asking that question because he has been in this office many, many times. But it's an honor to have Dr. Kissinger with us, a man of immense talent and experience and knowledge. And I'm going to talk to him for a while, and we're going to learn a lot. But I can say from a world standpoint, and with many of the countries that Henry and I would talk about before the election, because I would talk with Henry before the election, we've made a lot of progress with many of them. We have some outstanding, and we'll handle that as we have to handle it. But we've made a lot of progress in the Middle East with ISIS and so many other things. It's a much calmer place. But Henry, I say often, I inherited a mess, but we're fixing it. So you may want to say something. And thank you for being here, Henry. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I didn't expect this opportunity. It's always a great honor to be in this office. And I'm here at a moment when this opportunity to build a constructive, peaceful world order is very good. And the President is leaving on a through Asia, which I think will make a great contribution to progress and peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, is Senator Ingalls right that you're putting the U.S. on the path to World War III?
Thank you. We were on the wrong path before. All you have to do is take a look. If you look over the last 25 years, through numerous administrations, we were on a path to a very big problem, a problem like this world has never seen. We're on the right path right now, believe me.
Mr. Secretary, do
the IQ.
Thank you all. Have a good one. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, do you worry that we're on a path to World
concerned that the Parker dispute will affect tax reform at all, sir?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think we're well on our way. The people of this country want tax cuts. They want lower taxes. We're the highest tax nation in the world. Our companies are not leaving so much now because we have them coming back. You see what happens. You see the announcements from companies building car plants now in Michigan. They're going to various different states. They're actually picking some additional locations. But just last week, 5 plants announced that they're going to build in this country. But I will say that we're the highest tax nation in the world. People want to see massive tax cuts. I'm giving the largest tax cuts in the history of this country. In addition to that, there'll be reform. So I think that it's politically, it's very positive. The people of the country want it. We're also bringing back $3 trillion from offshore.
The Atlas Peak fire, as of 5:45 this morning, we had 25,000 acres burned. No reported of any containment at this point. As Supervisor Ramos and other electeds have alluded, it's about making sure people are safe. Safety is our number one concern right now. These has caused some evacuations. On Atlas Peak Road, that is a mandatory evacuation. Also on Monticello Road, Atlas Peak to Circle Oaks, Soda Canyon Road, the avenues, Vichy, Hagen, Olive Hill, Monticello Park, Silverado Country Club, Wooden Valley Road, Coombsville Road to Wild Horse Valley, Silverado Trail between Trancas and Sage Canyon between Silverado Trail and Turtle Rock, Capel Valley from Turtle Rock to Muscovite Corners. Now, a lot of folks have asked where are folks going to. So for our district, the evacuation centers are the Napa Valley College Gym. That address is 2277 Napa Valley Highway in Napa. And we also have Crosswalk Church, which is at 2590 First Street. There was a lot of impact in our district. I had a chance to visit our district yesterday, and we're going to do everything to keep you safe, to make sure that you guys and gals can go back to your district. But our concern right now is your priority in making sure Napa County is safe. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Diane Dillon. I'm supervisor for the upper half of Napa County, which includes the source of the Tubbs fire near Calistoga. The good news is that Calistoga, the city of Calistoga, is safe. Power was restored there yesterday afternoon. The Tubbs fire itself has not increased in size that we know of, but Petrified Forest Road is still closed. The road that leads over to Calistoga, Highway 128, is still closed. The road that goes from Calistoga up to Knights Valley. So the main thing we want to emphasize, we have a voluntary evacuation north of Tubbs Lane. But please stay out of the evacuation areas if you can, and we're going to be going on the radio. Chair Ramos will talk about that in a moment, to be able to communicate the message out more, because so many people do not have, as Senator Dodd said, access to the cell service, or and in my case, and no power still in where I live in St. Helena. So thank you for getting the message out as much as you can.
And I'm Brad Wagon-Connect. I'm supervisor from the 1st District, and I'm going to talk about the Partridge fire. It's the little brother of these other 2 big fires. We have about 1,000 acres, but still zero containment. The Carneros mandatory evacuations are Old Sonoma Road, Buman to Buman, Buman to Henry, Henry to Dealey, Duhigg at Las Amigas, and Las Amigas at Cuttings Wharf. And the Partridge Road mandatory evacuations are Partridge. We had last night 30 people staying at the Crosswalk Church and 100 people staying at the Napa Valley College.
We understand and we are very concerned that loved ones are looking for their family, they're looking for their friends, and certainly communication has been a struggle to achieve locating family. We want to encourage people, if you are looking for information on a loved one, the best place to look is www.safeandwell.org. Shelters are registering evacuees at this time. For confidentiality reasons, we are not able to release those names. That has to be done through that website, but we encourage people at the shelter to register. We encourage other evacuees to register. Even if you haven't been evacuated, go ahead, register so that that communication is opened with your loved ones and people that may be looking for you. We are working on establishing public access points of registration, and we'll be working with our library director on if we are going to have the capacity to open up our libraries, to have that be an additional source of a communication. At the present time, Comcast has opened a public Wi-Fi service in the following zip codes: 95401, 95403, 95404, 95405, 94558, 94559, 94903. These complimentary sessions, we're very grateful to Comcast, will be open through Friday, October 13th. Once a hotspot selected is going to be once a hotspot select Xfinity Wi-Fi network, and then you can launch your browser from it. It will take you into the registration for the hotspot once you are on that location. So certainly communication is key. At this time, we will go into some particulars of safety, and I would like to introduce Sheriff John Robertson.
Hi, John Robertson, Napa County Sheriff Coroner. It's with sorrow that I tell you today that we have confirmed 2 fatalities. Charles and Sarah Rippey, ages 198, were unable to be evacuated from the 100 block of Westgate in Napa County. Our thoughts are certainly with the family at this time. Thank you.
As of now, there are 27,000 people without power in Napa. After my tour of some of the fire zones yesterday, you can see why. A lot of down power lines. And when I went home last night to check with my family after a long day, there's people at home without power but without Wi-Fi, and they just don't know what's happening, especially if they're near a fire zone or not. So PG&E is going to be working today on restoring power for those areas outside the fire zones. And then PG&E's got to work with Cal Fire on the other areas, restoring power fully to Napa. So that's in progress. Another piece of safety is people wanting to get home. We understand people want to get home just to check on their house or to get home and get back to their closet full of clothes and take a shower. We get that. But it's super important right now that everybody comply with evacuation orders for a lot of good reasons. And to help me explain that, Chief Bierman. Thank you.
Good morning, Barry Bierman. I'm the Deputy Incident Commander with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3, as well as the Napa County Fire Chief. Currently, in the evacuation areas, we have a lot of devastation that's gone on. And as discussed here today, there are a lot of people, as we can understand, that want to get back in there. Our number one priority is the safety. It's the safety of the public and the people that are evacuated, the safety of our first responders. Before we can get anyone back into these areas, there's a process to ensure that safety, to repopulate. It's typical this time of an incident in some areas where we don't see smoke that understandably people want to get back in. However, it's not safe to do that until we can secure the utilities, the gas lines, ensure the trees aren't going to fall down on top of someone. So that area of repopulation is a process that we're already starting to work on. However, it is not as easy as one would hope to ensure that safety. So I ask that people please be patient as we work in these areas. The fires are still out there. They are still actively growing. We will be updating acreage and containment daily as we get that information. Resources still continue to be limited. We have folks on the fire line starting their 3rd shift right now that have not been relieved because there's folks not available to come in with so many fires in the area. We are having to share resources as there are many priorities in the communities that are being affected by this. So everyone is working hard with not only trying to get people back into the areas that fire has gone through, but also the areas that still continue to have fire. We are still having active fire in all locations. We are unfortunately continuing to experience additional structure loss that happens due to the fire growth. The winds yesterday went from a northern wind to a southwestern wind in the evening and pushed the fire back in different directions on all the fires. Our team currently is overseeing the Partridge Fire, the Nuns Fire, and the Atlas Peak Fire. And so getting resources out there, protecting property and saving lives is still the priority, and working on perimeter control and defensive structures where applicable. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, I'd like to add one last thing that came up. Right now is a time of, on the instance where people, if they can't get in, want to start using things like drones. We ask that you please refrain from any drone use in any fire areas. If you fly, we cannot fly our aircraft, and we have aircraft on all of our fires trying to contain these incidents. So please make sure that those drones do not go up. Thank you.
Additionally, from a safety and utility standpoint, if there are sewer backups or emergencies into your homes, we ask that you call 707-204-4347. That is an environmental health matter. So again, sewer backups into your home, call 707-204-4347. Of course, being able to share the most relevant and up-to-date information is what the EOC is tasked to do, and we know that that brings comfort to people, whether they're in the evacuation zones or not. We will continue round the clock to provide the most up-to-date information, and simply because someone is not getting that nixle message, it doesn't mean that the information isn't coming. It means that something has not changed. I will again reiterate those platforms that we're using to distribute the most current information, and that is the county's website. The county's website also includes fire incident maps as well, so you can check that out. We're using social media platforms of Facebook and Twitter. We're using Nixle. Nixle is our emergency mass communication system. It can be email or text based. To receive the alerts, you may text your zip code to 888-777, or you can go onto Nixle.com and sign up for the emails. Additionally, this service is available in Spanish by texting ESP and your zip code to 888-777. We're continuing to coordinate with our media partners, and we thank you all for being here today to be able to get the message out to our residents and to those that are concerned of our residents.
All right, guys, so we're going to pull out of that press conference from California. We're joined by Ronica Cleary inside the digital newsroom.
Hi. Still finishing my snack.
She's having a snack. So thanks for joining us, guys, today. I see that a couple of you have jumped on. Of course, we're continuing to cover these wildfires in Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino counties, which have already caused, I want to say, at least 10 deaths. Yes. We had that on the bottom of our screen, and more than 100 evacuations, including an evacuation of our own Tucker Barnes, our weather guy's mom, whose family lives in Northern California.
Sad story. And he said she has
horses,
and she doesn't know what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
You always feel when you hear these stories, but when someone has a personal connection, it does sort of change it a little bit when you hear exactly what that individual is going through, because when it's on the news, it's just numbers, and sometimes when you hear Tucker tell the story about his mom, it was just heartbreaking.
He came over because it kind of happened late in the morning, so his stuff in the show was already done, and he was like, she grabbed a couple things, like her hairbrush literally, and a couple things, and got out safely, thank goodness. But some people did not. Yeah.
And she got her dogs. So
oh, good. Okay. So yeah, if you wonder why we were kind of pulling out of that back into the newsroom, that press conference is finishing up now, but if we do have other coverage and of course aerials of that continued damage in California, we're going to make sure we bring that to you live. But Ronica, our political reporter, White House girl, she kind of covers all that stuff. And
hey guys.
Yeah, I guess we'll kind of chat about what is up today.
Just kind of check in. The White House has been kind of quiet lately. We haven't been there as often. There ebbs and flows in when he's out of town and in town. So I think this week is the first day back. I think I was there maybe just one day last week, I think, actually. So we're just getting ready to go back. The briefing today is at 1:45 with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And then, and I was away last week too. So it has been, add that to... Anyway, it's been a while since I've been there, but we're excited to go back today.
Going back today, yep.
So we'll be at the briefing today at 1:45. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins will be at the White House at 3 o'clock to celebrate their victory with the Stanley Cup. And Molly, you and I were talking about the controversy of inviting these teams and how some of the teams protest the president. And there was the controversy with Steph Curry and how he said that he wasn't sure if he wanted to go for his team's victory. And then the president just said, well, forget it. You're not sure. You're not invited. And then there was this controversy about rescinding the offer. Did they ever really, rescinding the invite, did they ever really invite them? So I think that some of that controversy may be brought back up again today because the Pittsburgh Penguins are going. to the White House
Yeah.
today. So I think that may come up again. And then obviously with the NFL kneeling controversy, and then ESPN's
Jamel Hill. It's so much, that he's been tweeting on.
And, I mean, so sports are now a big part of my job, which feels a little out of the realm of my comfort zone. But I'm figuring
it out.
And I think we have a lot of Pittsburgh fans in this office.
We do.
So I think they
if you guys are, let us know.
Excited to see the Penguins there today and want some pictures and some of the inside look. I feel a little guilty that I'm not more of a Penguins fan, that I get to experience this, because I think there are people here that might really be like jazzed to go.
Yeah, there are.
Have you seen Jim Loke in his Pittsburgh onesie?
No, but I believe that he would do that.
Yes, he has one. So I'll make sure to take some pictures and send them to them.
That's so interesting. But you're right. That has kind of stirred up controversy, because we've seen so many teams after their championships visit the White House. The New England Patriots, where I'm from, and I saw that, and then we kind of saw who didn't come. There was speculation as to why. Tom Brady, who's been an outspoken Trump supporter / fan, actually didn't show up, and people there were rumblings about why possibly he wasn't there. And then the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry, and then his uninviting from Trump. And now today. So we'll see how that goes, and if there are any outspoken players that just don't go.
Also, I just thought of this. I didn't think to bring up this tweet, but there was also then the tweet this morning, just tying into sports, the sports controversy of it, because you just listed a ton of things that are happening.
Sure.
The president tweeted today about, I guess, tax breaks that NFL teams get, and saying that, if you're going to kneel during the national anthem, that he doesn't think you should get those tax breaks. So then there's this other aspect of sports and the controversy. There's the tweet. I don't know if you
I'll see if I can grab it.
Sorry, I didn't plan ahead for that.
No, I found it.
So
there it is. Take us
why
off.
is the NFL getting massive tax breaks while at the same time disrespecting our anthem, flag, and country change tax law? So, the intersection of sports and politics right now is undeniable, and it's just it's nonstop. It's funny. I have a friend who's a big sports fan, and he said to me that he felt frustrated by Mike Pence leaving the game.
That was a big thing. We talked about it yesterday.
He was saying, I wanted all this controversy to be over. I just want to watch my football games. And now it's going to be back in the headlines again for a couple of weeks. So I'm sure there are some viewers who feel like they don't want the controversy at all, because they just want to watch football and enjoy the games. And then there are, of course, people who think the controversy is a great thing. But when he said that to me, I just thought, that's a really interesting point.
It's an interesting point. It's true.
He was like, please make it stop. I just want to watch football.
And didn't Trump tweet after the whole Pence thing that he did ask the vice president to leave if there were any protests?
Yes.
So it was almost like there was a backup, but which really came first? We don't really know.
I don't know. But he did say he was in that area planning to go to that game, because there was some controversy about the cost for the vice president to go, and then plan to leave, if you will, because people said you knew they were going to kneel. But what my understanding is that he had always planned to be in that area, so it wasn't some additional trip just to make a statement that he was, and he is a Colts fan. So
and he's from he's from Indianapolis or Indiana.
Yes,
he was a governor. So what do we think? I mean, is Sarah Sanders going to be peppered with some of these sports question type things today?
For sure. Another interesting tweet that did come up today that I would be curious to hear Sarah speak about, and I'm sure it will come up. I actually think it was his most recent tweet, if we can bring that up. Not
this.
Let's see. Maybe it wasn't. Talking about since Congress isn't getting its act together, let's pull that one up. To me, that suggested that there might be an effort on the part of the president to sign an executive order related to health care. So he says, since Congress can't get its act together on health care, I will be using the power of the pen to give great health care to many people fast. And so, we have seen the failed efforts that Republicans put forth to repeal and replace Obamacare several times in the past few months. And now the president tweeting this to me says, he's going to sign an executive order. What is it going to be? What is it going to entail? I just thought that was a very newsworthy tweet, in that it opens up a real big set of possibilities. So that is where, in terms of my non-sports hat, if I even had a sports hat, I didn't know.
Well, now you're going to have one.
More like newsy hat was thinking, oh my gosh, I want to hear what she has to say about that in the briefing today. I'm really curious if she'll give us any information or insight into what that tweet is suggesting. Now, Sarah is very close to the vest. She does not give away much.
We noticed
so
that,
if she doesn't want to, she's not going to tell us anything.
Sure.
But it's something I'll be looking for in the briefing for sure.
That'll be interesting. So kind of a quiet, I guess, week for White House stuff. Our eyes have been on California. Our eyes have been on what else is in the politics that we've been covering? Not a lot of Trump, because he's been...
the local headlines. We covered the debate last night in Virginia, and
governor's race.
It's good to have a little balance and not to cover the White House every day. I mean, you need to cover it in some way, but it's good that we're trying to give our viewers a balance of headlines and stories. It's a constant struggle to figure out where to draw that line and how much is too much or how much is not enough. But you know, we do our best. So we'll be at the White House today, and we'll take it from there. We'll see what happens.
It's so interesting too when Trump gives those sort of ominous statements like "you'll find out next," or you're often in those crowds, right? And you're kind of, or maybe you hear them, and
it's incredible.
Like, what's it going to be? Is he going to tweet?
It's really incredible to see some of the things that happen, and then I'll watch them replay on the news, and I'll say, "Oh my gosh, I was there." I was there. But there is a difference. I don't know if this is too inside baseball, but if your viewers are curious, so there's a press pool. And the press pool is a small group of press. They rotate every day. And that's the White House press pool, excuse me. And that small group sees a lot more of the things you're talking about. And so I still see some things, but they get to go inside the Oval Office and get the footage that we as viewers see from inside the Oval Office. Right. Because when you look inside that press briefing room, there's probably 50, 60, 70 reporters in there. They cannot go into the Oval Office and for 5 minutes. So they pick this select group, like one that represents television, one that represents radio, one that represents print. So, and that's why they rotate them. And then they all share that footage. It's actually a really impressive way that the press works together through the White House Correspondents Association to make it possible, because we can't all be in those places. And so a lot of when he'll say, you know, we'll see, or I'll tell you about that later, that'll be a passing moment in the Oval Office or something. And unfortunately, I'm not in there for that, because we at Fox 5, we're not a part of that press pool rotation just because of the way we do things, which is fine. It's not a bad or good thing, but I don't get to see all the cool stuff.
That's true. And a lot of those feeds that we do that we have in the press will come in here,
those feeds from
and we
the press
see them,
pool, sharing them with all of the people who cover. I mean, just from a professional standpoint, when you step back, you think this is so cool how these groups have all managed to work together and cover the most powerful man in the world in a way that we all can have access to. It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
So that's just me being a big dork.
Yeah, totally. Well, you love
inspired for how we can all get it.
But isn't this unlike any administrations you've ever covered before? I mean, it's kind of so different and wild and crazy
things.
This
is my first time covering an administration
you were
Washington.
In Washington.
So, yeah, it's incredible. But I joke sometimes that it certainly set my expectations at a certain place that I don't know that other administrations have been as I don't know what the right word is, but they've been different.
Sure.
And so I imagine if I continue to cover White House administrations, this one will very much stand out.
I think so. I think so for sure. Well, great. So you're off to the White House now.
The briefing starts at 1:45.
Okay.
My instinct is it won't start on time.
Usually late.
They're usually late, and it's set up sometimes. I mean, if there's an event that happens right after it, she has to end the briefing with enough time to get to the next event. So the event with the Pittsburgh Penguins is at 3.
Oh, she'll make sure it's tight. She's done that before.
I mean, I can't say officially that's what she's doing, but it appears that's what she's doing, that if she gets in there a little late, it has to end by 10:03 or 2:45 to get everybody in there.
They do say that.
Odds are it's going to start maybe 2:15.
Yeah.
Be done by 2:45, and then we got to go to the next
I think so too.
So that's okay. I mean, once I figured it out, because I don't have a seat in there. So I would just be standing, and sometimes, I mean, you might stand for an hour because you get there, you know, an hour early, and then it'd be starting an hour late. And I know that sounds dramatic, but that's hard to stand for 2 hours in one place and nowhere to sit. So now I get there pretty much on time because I know where I'm going to be, because then I know I'm going to have to stand a half an hour waiting.
Sure.
These are the struggles of my life. This is not real problems,
really
but it is interesting to kind of get inside behind the scenes stuff that you just don't think about.
Totally. It's really cool to have eyes on the White House and inside the White House from Ronica when she gives us our inside look. We'll do that again. We'll do some Skype inside.
I really want to take you guys inside.
I would love that on a slower day, on a better day.
That would be a lot of fun. I'll Skype with you guys, and I'll show you also just how small everything is. People get a little surprised that it's as small as it is, and the area that we have access to, we have little gray badges. They're color coded we can't get to much of the White House. So the area that we have is
small,
not very glamorous, but
yeah,
it's still really cool.
It's cool. We can get in there.
Yeah.
So again, if
we'll
you
take
guys,
you behind the scenes.
We'll go behind the scenes someday. And if you are Pittsburgh fans, guys, we'll likely have that ceremony on. We're going to be pushing it to our Facebook page, I believe. Probably not on the YouTube channel, but we'll have it on our Facebook page because I'm sure we have some of you guys out there who want to see the champions.
We definitely have some people at Fox 5 that want to see it.
We definitely do.
So that's going to be super cool. I can't wait. But thanks for letting me check in, and I promise to check in more with you and give you guys more updates.
So good.
So it'll be so fun.
On our digital show. Thanks, Ronica. All right, have a great day.
Thank
you.
Just
scoot out.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, whatever.
I'm like, wait, how does this work?
Yeah, no, either way. So, guys, we'll probably just we're continuing to cover the fires and sort of the updates from there. It looks like I have there's a reporter. Bye, Ronica. There's a reporter live who's there giving updates. So I'm going to give you a look at this scene here in Napa County, I believe this is. And then we'll have some other coverage of some other stuff that's going on as it happens today, guys. Take a look. Live, California.
Well, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your devoted service to our great nation. I look forward to your questions.
Hey, well, thank you so much for that incredibly thought-provoking and fantastic speech. You raised a number of very interesting and important questions that I would love to talk about for the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. Unfortunately, we have about a half hour. So what I want to do is have this both a dialogue between us as well as the audience. There are microphones up on the concourse, so if you'd like to ask a question to the Deputy Attorney General, please line up by one of the microphones, and I'll alternate between questions I ask as well as some audience questions. So what I want to talk about first before we get into the nuts and bolts of the encryption and going dark debate, you mentioned at the beginning of your remarks the oath that both federal prosecutors and midshipmen take. What advice do you have for the midshipmen in the audience about how to always remain faithful to that oath?
Well, I can share with you the advice that I share with federal prosecutors. It was my job as U.S. Attorney for 12 years to administer that oath to our new assistant U.S. attorneys. And what I tell them and what I would tell you is that that oath gives you a responsibility to act consistently with the traditions that you've inherited. When you joined the Navy, you were very proud, and your families and friends were proud, because of the tradition that they knew that you were becoming a part of. And that's not a legacy that you earned, it's a legacy that you inherited, and you're the beneficiary of it. Taking that oath gives you an obligation to carry it forward and to make sure that you in your own conduct act consistently with your obligations, and also that you monitor your colleagues, because each of them has the ability to influence that reputation as well. So always keep that in mind, that you have a responsibility not just to yourself and your family, but to all those who came before and all those who will come after.
Thank you. Now, getting into the encryption and going dark debate, as an observer, I've been quite surprised over the past few years as to how heated and contentious this debate has become. And what I see from the folks who might disagree with some of the points that you made is it often coming down to a lack of trust for law enforcement, saying we don't want to change any policies related to encryption because we don't trust that the government will abide by all of these restrictions. What can you say and what can you do to instill that trust?
Well, actually, what we have in mind is not a system where you necessarily need to trust the government. Because we don't think the government has to have possession of the keys or possession of the information. What we have in mind actually is that companies could be responsible for that in the same way that they're currently responsible for the information. And so we would actually not want to mandate that they achieve law enforcement warrant ability in any particular way. We would leave it to the engineers who design these systems to design them in a way that ensures that if and when the government obtains a warrant and has a legitimate need for access to that information, that they're able to produce it. And so the assurance in terms of the government would be that in no case would the government be acting without proper process, without a court order. That's the same process we use for everything else in our society. There are no secrets that are immune from access with a court order. The court can compel you to produce documents. It can compel you to testify. It can authorize the government to execute search warrants and break into homes and businesses, but only with probable cause and a judicial finding. And that's the same sort of standard that would apply in cyberspace as it does everywhere else.
Excellent. Now, in your years as a prosecutor, you've been with the DOJ since after clerking in law school. You must have faced other challenges in terms of gathering evidence, investigating, and prosecuting that relate to technology. How does this differ from what you've seen over your career?
There are two differences. The first is just in volume. When I started prosecuting in 1990, a complex white-collar fraud case might involve a few dozen boxes of documents. Now, with electronic evidence, digital evidence, you have exponentially more evidence. But in the old days, when I started prosecuting 27 years ago, we could get access to every document. We weren't restricted by encryption. So that's the most significant difference. There's two significant differences: the volume of information and the existence now of warrant-proof encryption, so that even with a court order, we're unable to get evidence.
Now, you talked about some possible changes in terms of the technology side of things. I'm wondering, on the legal side, there's been a lot of debate about whether the current laws, including the All Writs Act, can compel technology companies to provide assistance, or whether there might need to be a new statute passed by Congress, similar possibly to CALIA. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So the All Writs Act, for the non-lawyers in the room, the All Writs Act is a statute that dates back to the founding of the Republic and generally empowers courts to issue orders that are required to carry out their responsibilities. And so the government has argued that the All Writs Act authorizes the court to require the providers to comply with warrants. There's been resistance to that, though, and no definitive, dispositive judicial ruling. And so when we go down that road, the providers always resist and appeal and delay. And so the existing law may well authorize the government to get what it needs, but it's always more effective and always elicits quicker responses if there's particular legislation that requires that result.
Okay. And one other interesting part of this debate that I've noticed over the past few years is just sort of the adversity between at least some tech companies and the government. And when you look at other areas of cybercrime over the years, there hasn't necessarily been that adversity. When you look, for example, at child pornography, there have been successful efforts like PhotoDNA, which the technology sector developed with Dartmouth researchers and NCMEC, and that's something they've gone above and beyond their duty to help crack down on child pornography distribution. Do you think that cooperation is even possible at this point, or have the politics of it sort of shifted so much that?
I'm not sure it's about politics. I think the government is always willing to engage in discussions about these challenges, and when we talk about the issue, we talk about it in candid terms because we actually see the implications in our investigations. We generally don't use heated rhetoric, and we try to be clear that we support encryption and we support cybersecurity, and we are not seeking to allow the government to snoop without proper authorization. And so that kind of rhetoric doesn't come from the government side. I think the reaction that you see, as I described in my remarks, is a product of number one, people who sincerely believe that absolute privacy is an important value, and I respect that, but you have to recognize that if you have a system that is impregnable to law enforcement, then you're going to allow a lot of crime. You're going to prevent law enforcement from being able to solve crimes, and that's the reason why people like Cy Vance and I are talking about this problem because I think it's important for people to understand what the implications are. But then you also have people who have a profit motive who actually market encryption, and they've got an understandable incentive to do that. And so I think that's why it may be very difficult to arrive at a compromise on this issue where there have been compromises on other issues, but when it's in the interest of the companies to advertise that their software and hardware is impregnable even to the government, and that's actually a marketing tactic, it's going to be very difficult to arrive at a consensus.
And now Apple has obviously played a large role in this debate. Their CEO has made a number of statements about the encryption, and they've taken some legal positions. And they really are the focus of a lot of this discussion. There are other technology companies out there. I'm wondering if you could talk about any discussions you've had with them, and are you hearing the same arguments, or do you think there might be some room for agreement with other companies?
I think it's important to point out that the government does not have a contentious relationship with Apple or any other of these technology companies. There are a lot of areas where we work cooperatively with them on cybersecurity. It's this one area of encryption where there appears to be an insurmountable difference of opinion, but you shouldn't at all draw the conclusion that that we are adverse to technology companies. We're very supportive of technology companies. We work with them to enhance their security and to achieve mutual goals. For example, the child pornography, the effort to combat child pornography that Professor Kasov made reference to. And we do work with many technology companies, and there are ongoing relationships with those companies.
Excellent. Before I go on, I'd like to encourage anyone who has questions to please go to the microphone. We have about 15 minutes left, and it would be great to get some questions from the audience. One thing I did want to talk about is we often talk about the encryption debate in the domestic law context. Obviously, the internet, telecommunications are global, so we need to look at what other countries are doing as well. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your counterparts in other countries have been doing, and if you've been having any discussions with them.
We do. We engage in continual communications with our allies, both in particular cases where we have shared interests and access to data, or where we have data that they need access to, or they have data that we need access to, and also on the broader policy issues. So it's an ongoing discussion. Different countries have different laws that apply in varying ways. Some countries don't have the First Amendment, for example, and some countries have place different values on privacy. But we do have ongoing discussions with them, and all of our allies face the same challenge. Anybody who is seeking to fight crime and terrorism faces the challenge of dealing with adversaries who have found ways to communicate secretly and to conceal evidence of their misconduct.
I see midshipman up on the right. Do you have a question?
Thank you, sir. Midshipman Ingle. I wanted to ask, assuming that we can trust the government to use an avenue to access encrypted data responsibly, how can we trust them in light of recent attacks and release of classified information and tools at NSA to protect those avenues from foreign adversaries and third parties?
Well, as I described, what we have in mind here is not for the government to sweep up data and then store it for future use. We're talking about situations where there is a particular targeted need, a criminal investigation, just as there would be in the physical world, where there's documentary evidence that's in possession of a particular person. We can get a search warrant or a subpoena and compel that person to produce the document, or authorize agents to break into the building and take custody of the document. That's the way we conduct criminal investigations. That's the same thing we have in mind with regard to responsible encryption. When there's a particular need in a particular case, the government is authorized, with the permission of the judge, to get access to that precise information. So you don't need to trust the government to keep random data safe, because we wouldn't be collecting random data. We'd only be collecting the same sort of information that we normally collect in all of our other cases when there are physical documents that are relevant to an investigation.
Do Did I see another question? I'm not sure. Okay, so
the balcony there, I believe.
Yeah. Yes.
Servant First Class Luli. I agree that allowing private companies to develop these technologies would provide a means for crime. At the same time, in a very interconnected world, these means are often the only way for private citizens to achieve privacy. Going beyond mere privacy, these technologies offer protection against abuses of power. My question deals specifically with the press, which performs the essential task of uncovering these abuses of power. In your opinion, sir, would banning dark technologies rid Americans of their only means of uncovering instances of government abuse of power?
So I'm not sure I heard the whole question, but I think you're asking about the media. Is that the question?
Yes, sir. Media uncovers government abuse of power. That's one of their main tasks. But if these technologies were banned, then the government would have a means of targeting these, the media that is trying to uncover them.
Thank you for that question, because I want to be very clear. We are not in any way suggesting that encryption technologies, cybersecurity technologies should be banned. Quite the contrary. We think they should be as robust as possible. The issue, though, is whether or not the companies should retain the ability to assist law enforcement when there's a need to get access to a particular communication, a particular set of stored data. And so, the analogy would be that we allow people to buy a safe, for example. You can buy a safe and you can make it very secure, but there's still going to be a way to get into that safe where you have a lawful court order. That's basically the analogy to what we're talking about in the cyber world. Not to prohibit the production of the safe. In fact, we want to encourage the creation and marketing of safes that are secure as possible to protect data against intrusion by criminals and terrorists. We just think that there should be a way preserved so that with appropriate judicial approval in a case where there is probable cause that justifies it, the company retains the ability to help government get access to the safe.
So just building on that analogy, what some of the technology companies would say is, okay, you could have that safe, but it'll even be more secure if there isn't a way to get into it. How would you respond? Would you agree with that? And do you think that's just a trade-off that we have to have for national security?
I think there are two levels of responses to that. The first is that even if it were the case that a safe that is completely impregnable is more secure than one that is subject to a warrant, I think it would be appropriate for us to make a responsible decision about whether or not we want to incur the cost of creating warrant-proof safes. Maybe we do. Maybe we put it to a vote. We do. But people have to understand the consequences. The consequences are that people who use those devices will be able to commit crimes, will be able to victimize you and your family. And when you call 911, we won't be able to help because we won't be able to get in that safe. However, we actually don't think it's necessarily the case that those safes will be insecure, because we believe that there are many ways today that companies actually preserve the ability to have an alternative way into encrypted systems. And again, we don't suggest that we should dictate from the central government how that ought to happen, but we do know that most companies do have the ability to access their operating systems and to, as I described in my speech, there are multiple ways that they do it, and we would leave it to the engineers to figure that out. But we believe that it can be done because in some ways it actually already is done.
A question up there?
Second class Hyman from 12th Company. Does the Department of Justice currently encounter or foresee a risk that criminal organizations, terrorists, or even corporations facing antitrust lawsuits could access Department of Justice information to influence investigations or prohibit prosecution?
Well, the Department of Justice is just as potentially vulnerable as anybody else. And so we have information security experts, IT experts, who try to design our systems to resist, to limit the ability to break into them. But all computer systems are potentially vulnerable to intrusions. And so we're always alert for that sort of thing. But I do think that if somebody were to intervene in a government system and attempt in some way to obstruct the investigation, we'd probably figure it out and hold them accountable. So I would not suggest anybody try to do that.
Thank you, sir.
One thing that's slightly related to that, we're under constant cyber attacks from other countries, from Russia and our election system, from North Korea hacking some of our largest companies. And just, we've been talking a lot about the challenges that encryption poses for law enforcement. I'm wondering if you could talk about the role that encryption plays for national security when we're facing these threats from all over the globe.
So encryption is a valuable defense. That's the point that Professor Calif is making. And I think it's an important defense. As I said, we are all in favor of strong encryption and other techniques to defend American computer systems and American data from foreign intrusions and hacking. And that's a continuing effort. The government works cooperatively with the private sector. I mentioned earlier, we're not in any way in an adversarial relationship with tech companies. We have very close working relationships between the FBI, the Justice Department, and other federal agencies, and the technology companies. We want to do everything we can to help them develop systems that are protected against foreign intrusions. And then when there are efforts, we're going to do what we can to help defend those systems and, in appropriate cases, to take punitive action in response. And so we do work closely with the technology industry and with all private companies that face, as Professor Calif acknowledges, that face these constant cyber attacks.
See a question way up there.
Midshipman, third class NO. Sir, you talked about the intent of companies to go dark and make it even harder to get into their own devices. But sir, my question is, companies like Apple introduce fingerprint scanners, and even the newest iPhone you can open with a scan of your face. But these methods of unlocking devices can be court-ordered to be used. Doesn't this go against a sentiment of going dark and making their devices impregnable to law enforcement?
So the question is whether the companies are designing the systems in a way that's inconsistent with going dark?
Sir, because these new methods of unlocking devices can be court-ordered, doesn't that go against their own
yes,
intent?
I understand your point. Right now, so companies do engineer devices that allow you to unlock them with biometric information, like a fingerprint or facial recognition. But some of those companies...
Another thing, saving places and people that can be saved. If I can pull in some video that we took here just a couple of minutes ago about, I guess, half a mile or so behind Ursuline Road, which is where the high school is located. You see this thick, dark plume of smoke rising. That's the second time that plume of smoke started and then stopped. So clearly it's still a very active scene here at the high school, even though for the most part people...
I think that does illustrate that even from the company's perspective, they want to make their devices secure, but they also want to make them reasonable to use. And that's one of the reasons why companies do provide safeguards. If you forget your password, you are not necessarily out of luck. They do already have technology with recovery keys, for example, to get you into devices that you're locked out of. And so companies do, on their own, make that trade-off because they recognize that the people do value privacy, but they also value their own security, their own ability to get into the device if they were to forget or misplace a password.
Now, somewhat related to that, what challenges, and this may be less discussed in the going dark debate, but what challenges does the Fifth Amendment's self-incrimination clause play for you when you're trying to access these devices?
Well, the impact, give a brief survey of constitutional law, the impact of the Fifth Amendment is if you're investigating somebody as a suspect in a case, you can't ask them to confess. Actually, you can ask them, but generally they don't, and they're not required to. You can't require somebody to confess or to give evidence against themselves. And so that's why in a typical case, if we're investigating somebody who is in fact a criminal, if you ask them for the password, ask them to unlock the device, they're unlikely to do so. And then if you were to seek a court order to require them to unlock the device, generally speaking, they could be required to give you the password only if they were given certain immunity that would at a minimum limit our ability to introduce the fact that it was their device. So that's not a solution because the Fifth Amendment limits our ability to compel production, and even if it didn't, criminals would be unlikely to cooperate, and many would be unlikely to cooperate even with a court order. And of course, there are a lot of cases where we don't know who the suspect is. And that's one of the biggest challenges of going dark, is that because of the fact that we're dark, we don't actually know the suspect. If we know the suspect, we're actually a large portion of the way there to proving the crime. But in many cases, the encryption, the inability to access the data, or the fact that it's kept offshore in some place it's not accessible to us, actually prevents us from identifying the suspect in the first place.
Now, in a previous panel, they discussed the Berkman Center's report that was released earlier, and one of the points they made in that report is they acknowledged that encryption may impede surveillance of some data, but they noted that there are trends such as the Internet of Things that present great new opportunities, and I think you touched on this in your remarks. How do you respond to that?
It is true that there is more data, as I mentioned in my remarks. There are more information points out there, such as data that can be recovered from private surveillance cameras, data that can be recovered from internet-connected devices, location data and metadata, data telling you where somebody's been or with whom they've been in communication. But the flaw in that analysis is that that's not enough evidence, typically, to convict a criminal of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Typically, you're going to need the content. You're going to need evidence of what they said, what they did, what their state of mind was, and not just where they were, or what devices they used, or with whom they communicated. And so it's true that there's more data, but there isn't necessarily more data, or I should say, that metadata is not necessarily of the caliber of data that's going to be sufficient to prove a case in court.
So we're nearing about 2 years since the San Bernardino initial debate that made this really a very public issue. What are the next steps going forward? We've been discussing this. There have been a lot of debates. What do you see as sort of the next step for this?
So from our perspective in the Justice Department, working with district attorneys like Cy Vance and so many other prosecutors and police around the country, I think there are two goals. Number one is to keep pushing for a solution in every individual case when we're unable to break into a device and we have a court order, permission to do it, and it's relevant to a criminal investigation or a terrorism incident. We're going to do everything we can to find a way. San Bernardino is an example. Sometimes there are ways, but they take time and they take money, and sometimes you're never going to be able to get into it, or it's going to be too late. In the meantime, other people may be victimized. So that's one thing we're going to do. You keep pressing forward in every individual case. But the other thing that we're doing is that we are talking candidly about the problem and raising public awareness of the issue so that people ultimately can make their own decision about whether or not we want to live in a world where criminals can commit crimes with impunity, or whether we want to consider other options where there will be some responsible limitations on encryption to ensure that when there is a crime, when there is a bona fide law enforcement need supported by a federal judge, access will be available.
Excellent. Unfortunately, it looks like we're out of time. Could everyone please join me in giving a very warm thank you to the Deputy Attorney General?
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, sir. Thanks for coming. For midshipmen, please police your area. And for you, the guests attending the conference, we'll be working our way up to the second deck for lunch in the boat coppage room.
And just a supplement for conference attendees, if you could just stay in your seating area, we'll allow the midshipmen to clear out first, and then we'll escort you over to boat coppage. Thank you. Midshipmen, as you clear out, there are plenty of extra pizzas. Please, over in the Courseway or Causeway over by my right. So if you're hungry, grab an extra pizza on your way out. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, so that was Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in Annapolis. We're going to go over to what you see right below my face here. We're going to take that full screen. Vice President Pence will be taking part in a press conference on the wildfires. He is off to the Mojave Air and Spaceport for a briefing and a tour of that facility later this afternoon. But for now, he's in Sacramento area here, and he's going to be taking part in this briefing. So we're going to go full screen here and listen in.
Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Testing from the OTL. Check, check, check. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Please clear. Please, Coco, can you grab like cables that aren't being used and just clear them out of the way? Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Should we? All right. Burgess, do we have anything from the molt yet? Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're good? All right, we're good for the molt. Yes, sir.
The only way we can get it in the room. I don't think that we can do that without having a issue right now with these estimates.
Okay. They just want to get us to the molt and they want the visual.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for, sir. All right.
Test, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Testing, you good? Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good? A little more gain. Okay, test. Hey, can you kick out a little more to the molt? Test. Narciso, can you increase the volume, please? Yeah. Test. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Good there? Everybody good? Yeah, they're good at this point. Can I move? Are you good? Test. 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test. I'm gonna run into the podium there. Okay. This is like
probably like any minute now.
Hey, need him to. No. Test. Hey, we may not be able to plug it in. You guys good? flag. Test, test, 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. You good? No, they don't need more. They were good. You might need more.
See if the flags are in, Rebecca. Is that good? Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Welcome to California. Good.
Great it is. I appreciate everybody coming out today. Had just a great warm welcome from the Rockets today. It's been fun being out here for a few days. I see some of my really good friends out here. A real Rocket guy, Scott Kelly, and his fiance Amiko. Thank y'all for being here. Gosh, my good friend Dave Ward and his wife Laura Ward. Dave's such an icon in this city. Just numerous friends out here. If I go any further than that, I'm going to piss some people off. So it's great to have my 4 kids here. Dancy, I appreciate your help on this. My 4 kids here, Michael, Patrick, Blaine, and Blake, and my wife, Paige, my brother, Todd. I'm very fortunate that my parents are still here to see something like this. Y'all stand up, mother and father. Turn around. Turn around. Don't wave at me, wave at them. And my 4 kids, y'all please stand up. And my wife, Paige. And I said this, earlier, and I will tell you this. This is a generational asset we look at. And if you know us, we're not big sellers of assets. We're more acquirers. And I would be extremely disappointed, and I think they would too, if any of y'all are still covering this team in 50 years when I'm not around. I think you'll still be carrying it with the Fertitta family. I think it's going to be here for a long, long time because of it. Daryl's here. Daryl, you probably should be up here and not me. They probably want to hear from you more than me. But Daryl, we have one of I think, the best general manager in the NBA, and it's just great to have this management team. I know that you guys will ask me this, but I do think that we have one of the top management teams in the NBA, and Tad and Daryl and Rafael and just the whole staff underneath them. So that's it. That's an opening statement, and I'll be glad to answer questions. So whoever wants to start.
Over here, gentlemen.
It's only fitting you start.
Yeah, right. Of the many business deals that you've done, acquisitions you've completed, now that this is official, where does this stack up?
coordinating.
So operations is the resource group that is the group that actually coordinates our resources for us. So planning will help to implement tomorrow in terms of what resources we're sending, where they're going, and what the focus items will be for those particular resources.
Yeah, we'll all be. Jeffrey's really tall, so he'll be fine.
I'll have you all flanking.
You want us standing here? This
Down,
one?
down,
Down.
down.
Stay down for this.
Down.
No, that's great. You're tall.
Great job.
Honored to meet you. Wildfire. All right. Great people. Yeah, well, tired of those. All right.
Ground zero. We work a lot with Brian Marshall.
Yeah, he's
close. Yeah.
That's what you said? Yeah. You guys were great on the fire.
Thanks for the work you do.
Yeah, remember that barbecue? Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to be, in charge of everything. I mean, we're trying to get a plan where we get yeah, like 40 miles an hour.
Well, I'm going to be a step up from him, so let's see if I can. I'll still be short.
Come right up with me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thanks, man. Yeah. God bless you. Well, first off, let me just say how proud all of America is of California Office of Emergency Services. The efforts of the men and women in this room, the efforts of the first responders that you're supporting and coordinating are at this very moment saving lives. And I stand here on behalf of our president and on behalf of a grateful nation for all the work that California OES is doing for the people of these communities affected by these wildfires. I want to thank the director, Mark Ghilarducci. I want to thank General Dave Baldwin, and with CAL FIRE, your director, Ken Pimlott. I just received a briefing on the status of the wildfires affecting California. 17 wildfires burning across Northern California alone, additional fires, as we saw from afar in Southern California yesterday. Most heartbreakingly, we were informed that 13 people have lost their lives as these fires have moved so rapidly forward. More than 2,000 homes and businesses destroyed, tens and thousands of more in harm's way. Let me first say our hearts and the hearts of every American go out to the families of the 13 who've lost their lives. It's heartbreaking to think that many of the fallen represent our most vulnerable, in some cases senior citizens who simply were not able to escape the flames that overcame their homes. They're in our prayers. We're profoundly grateful to all of you in this room and to the hands and feet of the men and women who are working in emergency services all across the areas affected by these fires. I know the focus now is on containment and on moving people out of harm's way, and we're grateful for the efforts. And let me say, as I told Ken Pimlott moments ago, we are profoundly inspired and grateful by the firefighters that are in the fight, in many cases, men and women whose own homes have been affected by these wildfires. CAL FIRE is inspiring the nation, and we stand with them with great admiration and appreciation. Just a few moments ago, I informed Governor Brown that President Trump has approved a major disaster declaration for the state of California to assist in the response to wildfires that are impacting across the state. This declaration will allow FEMA to identify, mobilize, and provide additional equipment and resources to assist with the emergency. This includes debris removal, emergency protective measures, search and rescue operations. I'm pleased to report our administration has already been working with the team here at Cal OES to provide support even before this declaration. 5 firefighting crews, 4 dozers, 2 strike teams, Type 3 engines. More assets are on the way. I'm joined today by California's own Majority Leader in the Congress of the United States, Kevin McCarthy, and Congressman Jeff Denham. And I'm pleased to report that legislation that will be considered in the House of Representatives next week already includes $576 million for wildfire suppression to support the people of California and the efforts that you're coordinating in this room. You know, it's been a challenging month for the American people. A month and a half of natural disasters all across our country. But President Trump asked me to come here this morning to assure the people of California that we will continue to work very closely with Governor Brown, with the state of California, with each one of you to support your courageous first responders and come alongside the families affected through loss of persons and property in the wake of these wildfires. To California, we say through this declaration, we are with you, our prayers are with you, and we will be with you every day until we put the fires out and stand with these families to rebuild these communities. That's our pledge to each one of you today. So thank you. God bless you for your work, and we stand with you until the job is done.
Paul, pull my transmitter. You gotta turn it and pull it. Let's see, maybe I can get it. I'm going down. I don't know what works.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your good work, okay? Appreciate you. All right. Thanks a lot. You bet. Sure. Very inspiring. Love the Red Cross.
Thank you, sir.
Really. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So that's my job, is to make sure that they're down informed, we know what's going on.
Oh, that's tremendous. That's tremendous. It's just a heartbreak. These fires move so quickly, and
It's tough, it's tough to get out, and it's accessible to application. It's an issue we face, so we appreciate it.
great. You let us know how we can help. Okay? They know how to get me. Okay? Thanks. Thanks for your leadership. Great. Can you go this way? My wife's here.
Very nice to meet you.
Okay. Good. I'm gonna go this way. Thanks.
Walk your way.
You're fine, sir. No, you're fine. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. Karen and Mike. Thanks.
Give me.
Thanks all. Okay? Guys, keep up the good work, all right? Really. It's awesome. Thanks very much. Thanks. This is, I hope my words are all right. Really appreciate it. I just want people to know that we're with you. Absolutely. Okay? Thank you. With everything else going on, people in California might think. Sure. Yeah, so we're all in. Appreciate it. Okay, all right. Thanks so much. Thanks, man. Good job. Great. President? Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for coming.
You bet. It's an honor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Keep up the good work, okay? Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you so much. Great. Thanks, everybody. Keep up the great work. We're proud of you.
All right. Let's go. Thank you all so much.
Beautiful, y'all.
Whatever they want to do, and but the NBA has a policy, so we're going to live by the NBA policy, just like they make me live by all kind of policies. I have to follow their policies, so I expect the players to.
Christy Reekin from the Associated Press. Since you've wanted to own a team, specifically a team in your town for so long, what do you think that feeling will be in the season opener when you're sitting there and you're watching and it is your team?
It'll be kind of exciting, won't it? Who in the hell did set us up with Golden State when they're getting their rings, though, as our first game? So, but you know, it's exciting. I mean, it's a dream come true, and very few people in life get to have every dream come true. And I can tell you that Tillman Fertitta so far, and life is funny and you never know when good or bad's going to happen, has been one of the fortunate ones. And I get to have my dream come true when we come back here that next Saturday night and I get to walk on that floor and look at it totally different, even though I've walked on that floor hundreds of times. This is my building and my team, and it's kind of fun.
Hey, Tillman, Jack Woodhouse with the Houston Business Journal over here. The Rockets do have an esports division headed by Sebastian Park. What do you plan to do with the esports realm with the organization?
I can tell you we're looking at it very hard, and we're trying to do something with it. You got to understand, I already have the most profitable and most well-run online gaming enterprise already in the United States, in New Jersey, and it's only legal in New Jersey, and not to mix esports with gaming, but we totally understand it. And the Golden Nugget Gaming wins the award every year for best internet online gaming. And so immediately we're already excited about that, and we're excited to see what happens with sports and opening up other markets to gaming.
Tillman over here, Daniel Gotero, KHOU. You alluded to it during the opening statements. I actually got a shot of your dad getting really emotional when all of this is going on. What does this mean to the family? The fact that this will be in your family, and I think a lot of fans put a lot of stock into the fact that that kind of stability. What does that really mean to you?
There's nothing like a stable franchise in a city, okay? And we're Houstonians, and I'd like to. We were blessed, and I think we served the community in a very good way. And I've taught my kids that when you've been fortunate, you give back. And usually people in my position, aren't going to give the time to be chairman of the Board of Regents at the University of Houston for a record 4th time, where they had to change the rules so I could keep being chairman. I like to change rules. I need to change a few NBA rules. I've been chairman of the Police Foundation for 11 years. I've been chairman of and founder of Houston's Children's Charity, which, Laura Ward and Dave Ward have been involved in so many years. So I love giving back to the community, and I've taught my family that, and they understand how important the Rockets are to the community, and it's very emotional. It's it's real simple. I sat down with my family and I said, we're going to pay $2 billion for the Houston Rockets. Is there anything else y'all would rather buy with $2 billion? Because I've found a way to pull this off, which is a miracle in itself. Okay. Is there anything else you would rather own anywhere? Think about this big world we live in and this big planet. Do you want a space shuttle to hang out with Scott? What do you want? Do you want to go buy the Bellagio? And it wasn't even a close second, the Houston Rockets. Okay. This family loves owning the Houston Rockets. And like I said, as they will be involved in the decision-making process as much as I will. So if something happens you don't like, just go after my kids, okay?
Tillman, back here, Lester Gretsch, KSLM Univision 45. Given the fact that you were not successful in your first bid for the Rockets back in the day, and that you're now sitting here, does it make it any sweeter for you right now? And also, take me back to that moment when you got that phone call, when you were told it's done. Your thoughts at that moment?
Absolutely. It was a wonderful moment. I mean, because Tad had just kind of told me on Monday that the process is going to go on for a while, and I kind of realized that we're struggling here. and I happened to be on my boat in Marina Del Rey. I was shooting $1 Billion Buyer out there, and I was sick. So I was doing that, and then at the same time, the storm was coming, and Tad said, "Hey, can you come in tomorrow morning?" And I had called the day off from shooting my show because I just was so sick, and I said, and I think you said, well, maybe I told you I was more than happy to come in just
Right, you were
because
gonna come
I
in.
thought that's what he was going to tell me, so I was hoping, and it was just an unbelievable moment. But I mean, I can tell you, I was out in L.A. for a few weeks, and while we were negotiating the contract, just because of schedule with $1 billion buyer. So Patrick and two of my kids go to USC out there. So Patrick was living it with me every day, and I mean, we were waking up at 4 and 5 in the morning texting each other because we couldn't sleep over this deal. Okay, it was that bad. Okay, because you want something so bad, and you don't want to lose it, and he knows. Okay, nobody. I don't think there was a close second for passion in wanting this team.
No, and I'll give if I can expand on the answer. There was a time, it was the Friday that the storm was hitting, and we were closing the offices, and Tillman was sick, and it was just before that Leslie and I had a conversation, and he said, I'd like you to go ahead and engage in closing discussions with Tillman. And when I called him, and we were FaceTiming each other, and amazed that we could actually both figure it out together, that it happened, Tillman put his head down and he started to cry. And that was something that you can see immediately that it was the right call, because somebody who cares about it that much and really needed it and wanted it and has dreamed about it since he was a kid, and one of the most successful businessmen in the world, knowing that this was an opportunity that Leslie was giving him and that he had an opportunity to get this done. And I can say we had over 50 people who had submitted names. We had a dozen who were real potentials. We had about a half a dozen that we got down to that either provided LOIs or we had an opportunity to close. Tillman took it. Tillman came in because he was most passionate about it. He was most committed to it. He was most committed to this team, this city, most committed to our international reach, most committed to our fans in China, most committed to everything that we've developed organizationally, because this is his town and this is his team, and he wanted it more. And he went out and he took it. And we respect the hustle. That's one thing that you will always know about Leslie and about our organization, is that we feel the same way. You respect the hustle for people who go out there and they put their passion on their sleeve and they make it happen.
Thanks, Ted.
Tillman, you talked a little bit about earlier, you said that you're really into giving back and what you and your family have done. Can you just talk more about what we might see from the Rockets? Mr. Alexander has been really active in terms of giving money to the community and that community relationship. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
You got to remember, though, Leslie's only face was the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets and Landry's is the same. So you might not see the Houston Rockets as much because it's still coming through Landry's and Fertitta Entertainment. We're all one now. Where Leslie's only face in Houston was the Houston Rockets, we have a much bigger face. So I think my giving and the events and the money speak for itself over the years.
Paul Takahashi with the Houston Chronicle. What kind of restaurant brands do you think customers can see here at Toyota? I know you talked a little bit about that earlier, but are there, and then in terms of the $1 billion buyer, are you looking to have some cross-promotional deals with the Rockets?
You know, we want to cross-promotion anything we can to help offset that $2.2 billion. No, matter of fact, I mean, the $1 billion buyer is a set deal. Like, people say, gosh, what's it like having cameras follow you? You don't, everything is a scene, okay? But incidents that are happening real time, you always roll into it. And so, yes, just like the flood will be rolled into shows of the $1 billion buyer, the acquisition of the Rockets will be rolled into the...
All right, guys, so we've been covering a little bit of sports news here with the new owner of the Houston Rockets. This is a live press conference that is ongoing, but we're still following the wildfires, of course, that are consuming Northern California, Napa County, and there's a reporter there right now, so I want to bring you over there to see, we can check into one of her live shots to see what is the latest on those wildfires. I know that 13 are now dead. That's the number that we've been hearing reported, and at least 1,500 homes and businesses have been destroyed. So let's check in there and to see what she is reporting.
Neil, well,
California wildfires this season have already cost the state $2 billion, and that's before one of its biggest is ripping through Napa and Sonoma wine country. We're here at the command center where we've seen fire trucks deploy and continue trying to contain the fire. We've heard that from the fire chief that the fires are still 0 to limited amounts contained. At least 13 people so far have died. Hundreds are missing. The fires ripped through 2,000 buildings, damaging those permanently, and at least 20,000 people have been evacuated. Fire Chief Ken Pilmont says that as of last night, they had limited to 0 containment. The fire and smoke hitting vineyards in Napa and Sonoma County, and it's putting at least 650 wineries in jeopardy. Replacing just a single acre of grapes could cost up to $25,000. And at this time, we have no idea how many vines have been ruined, not to mention the effect it will have on the soil and future grapes. At least 90% of grapes have been picked, though. This is right towards the tail end of harvest season here in Napa. There's more than 100,000 acres of grapes in Sonoma and Napa counties combined. 13% of all wine comes here, but also a big industry is tourism. A lot of people coming here to taste and enjoy wine and visit, and they say that that could also have a big impact as a lot of the hotels have been hit and areas where people stay, and of course the wineries where the tasting rooms are and where the wine is have also been burning down as well. The good news is that most of the people in this area have been evacuated, but the bad news is we talked to several who have said their neighborhoods now resemble war zones. A lot of them said that it looked like a bomb went off, and they said really all that remains, Neil, up on that hill is a lot of refrigerators and cars that somehow have remained standing. Neil?
So that was a quick check-in Napa County with our Fox reporter who's out there doing live hits back to New York. But you're seeing now in the right corner of your screen a press conference from earlier. Napa officials don't have the exact number of the structures that have been damaged, but this was a really good press conference to kind of talk about the extent of the damage and sort of what they do know about who is being evacuated and how many, and some anecdotal stories as to people having to leave their homes and whatnot. So we're going to listen and hear this press conference from just a few hours ago this morning.
Submitted their declaration of disaster. The federal government almost immediately provided for federal fire assistant grants. That helps in a number of areas, and along with the state declaration helps to allow for the other areas to come in for mutual aid. It also provides important funding to the affected area. We've also put in for assistance from FEMA. That request has been made. I sent a letter signed by myself and Jared Huffman, who is the other congressman from Sonoma County, represents the other half of Sonoma County, to the White House. Yesterday, traveling with Sheriff John Robertson here in Napa, and then later with the Sheriff's Department on an overfly in Sonoma, took a number of photographs. All of those have been submitted to both FEMA and to the White House, so they understand exactly how serious and devastating this fire is on the people of our area. So we expect them to be moving quickly. I spoke with a FEMA director last night. They are understanding of the situation and will hopefully move quickly to declare both public assistance, and that's the federal money that will come to the affected area to do the repairs as needed and the response as needed, as well as the individual assistance, and that's grant money for people who have been harmed. Along with that comes a low-interest loan program. So all that is in the works. Senator Feinstein called me this morning. She is fully engaged in this, and she's pushing. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, spent a lot of time on the phone with her yesterday. She too is engaged, and the entire delegation, California delegation, will be pushing to get this response and these funds as soon as possible. I'll turn it over to Senator Dodd.
Good morning. First and foremost, you know, as the Congressman alluded to, that the emergency declaration was put forth yesterday morning, signed by Governor Brown. I've been in contact with the governor and also the pro tem and the Speaker of the Assembly as well. And one thing I think it's really important to reiterate is the great job that our first responders have been doing. Sheriff John Robertson and the entire law enforcement team from the California CHP, the local cities, and the mutual aid that we have, our fire chief, Barry Bierman, and all the different fire agencies from throughout the state of California that are coming forward to help. I think one challenge that we do have that we're working on right now is connectivity. We all, you know, none of us can stand it when we can't get an email or a text anytime we want it, but you get in that fire zone and or even closer to Napa, there is really no connectivity, and we're working hard to try to get that back. I talked to OES last night, and they have given me assurances that today's the day, but we need to get that going. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for attending today. Yesterday I had the opportunity to take a ride up into a Silverado area with the Sheriff's Department. There's nothing more devastating is to see a family see their home for the first time. So today, with the support of all of these people behind us, we're trying to get people into homes, but let's face it, we have to make sure it's a safe time to do that. I know it's going to take a lot of patience and compassion to do so. So just remember the state of California and the governor's emergency declaration is paramount, because we'll be able to get additional resources. We'll be able to help people get driver's license and their documents that they're looking for, because obviously they've lost a lot. So with that, I just want to thank all of you, but please have some compassion with these people. This is a very difficult time. It's a difficult time for all of us behind you, because we want to make everything fixed quickly, but quite frankly, it's going to take some time. Thank you.
We certainly understand the desire for information, and this morning we are going to give you as much details as possible. The 2017 Napa Fire Complex is comprised of 3 fires. That is the Patrick Carneros Fire, the Tubbs-Calistoga Fire, and the Atlas Peak Fire. At this time, we simply do not have any idea how many evacuees we have. We do not know how many structures have been affected, and the reason is this is not a fire that we are facing from a firefighting standpoint right now. This remains life safety, same as yesterday. We are working on evacuations, making sure that the scenes are secure and that people are staying away from the danger zone and allowing our law enforcement to access those areas. At this time, we will go into speaking about the updates on each particular fire zone. Supervisor Pedroza will speak on the Atlas Peak Fire.
Good morning, everyone. Alfredo Pedroza, County Supervisor for the 4th District. The Atlas Peak Fire, as of 5:45 this morning, we had 25,000 acres burned. No reported of any containment at this point. As Supervisor Ramos and other electeds have alluded, it's about making sure people are safe. Safety is our #1 concern right now. These has caused some evacuations on Atlas Peak Road. That is a mandatory evacuation. Also on Monticello Road, Atlas Peak to Circle Oaks, Soda Canyon Road, the avenues, Vichy, Hagen, Olive Hill, Monticello Parks, Silverado Country Club, Wooden Valley Road, Coombsville Road to Wild Horse Valley, Silverado Trail between Trancas and Sage Canyon between Silverado Trail and Turtle Rock, Capel Valley from Turtle Rock to Muscovite Corners. Now, a lot of folks have asked where are folks going to. So for our district, the evacuation centers are the Napa Valley College Gym. That address is 2277 Napa Valley Highway in Napa. And we also have Crosswalk Church, which is at 2590 First Street. There was a lot of impact in our district. I had a chance to visit our district yesterday, and we're going to do everything to keep you safe, to make sure that you guys and gals can go back to your district. But our concern right now is your priority in making sure Napa County is safe. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Diane Dillon. I'm supervisor for the upper half of Napa County, which includes the source of the Tubbs fire near Calistoga. The good news is that Calistoga, the city of Calistoga, is safe. Power was restored there yesterday afternoon. The Tubbs fire itself has not increased in size that we know of, but Petrified Forest Road is still closed. The road that leads over to Calistoga, Highway 128, is still closed. The road that goes from Calistoga up to Knights Valley. So the main thing we want to emphasize, we have a voluntary evacuation north of Tubbs Lane, but please stay out of the evacuation areas if you can, and we're going to be going on the radio. Chair Ramos will talk about that in a moment, to be able to communicate the message out more, because so many people do not have, as Senator Dodd said, access to the cell service, or and in my case, and no power still in where I live in St. Helena. So thank you for getting the message out as much as you can.
And I'm Brad Wagon-Connect. I'm supervisor from the 1st District, and I'm going to talk about the Partridge Fire. It's the little brother of these other two big fires. We have about 1,000 acres, but still zero containment. The Carneros mandatory evacuations are Old Sonoma Road, Buman to Buman, Buman to Henry, Henry to Dealey, Duhigg at Las Amigas, and Las Amigas at Cuttings Wharf. And the Partridge Road mandatory evacuations are Partridge. We had last night 30 people staying at the Crosswalk Church and 100 people staying at the Napa Valley College.
We understand and we are very concerned that loved ones are looking for their family, they're looking for their friends, and certainly communication has been a struggle to achieve locating family. We want to encourage people, if you are looking for information on a loved one, the best place to look is www.safeandwell.org. Shelters are registering evacuees at this time. For confidentiality reasons, we are not able to release those names. That has to be done through that website, but we encourage people at the shelter to register. We encourage other evacuees to register. Even if you haven't been evacuated, go ahead, register, so that that communication is opened with your loved ones and people that may be looking for you. We are working on establishing public access points of registration, and we'll be working with our library director on if we are going to have the capacity to open up our libraries, to have that be an additional source of a communication. At the present time, Comcast has opened a public Wi-Fi service in the following zip codes: 95401, 95403, 95404, 95405, 94558, 94559, 94903. These complimentary sessions, we're very grateful to Comcast, will be open through Friday, October 13th. Once a hotspot selected is going to be, once a hotspot select Xfinity Wi-Fi network, and then you can launch your browser from it, it will take you into the registration for the hotspot once you are on that location. So certainly communication is key. At this time, we will go into some particulars of safety, and I would like to introduce Sheriff John Robertson.
Hi, John Robertson, Napa County Sheriff Coroner. It's with sorrow that I tell you today that we have confirmed 2 fatalities. Charles and Sarah Rippey, ages 198, were unable to be evacuated from the 100 block of Westgate in Napa County. Our thoughts are certainly with the family at this time. Thank you.
As of now, there are 27,000 people without power in Napa. After my tour of some of the fire zones yesterday, you can see why. A lot of down power lines. And when I went home last night to check with my family after a long day, there's people at home without power but without Wi-Fi, and they just don't know what's happening, especially if they're near a fire zone or not. So PG&E is going to be working today on restoring power for those areas outside the fire zones. And then PG&E's got to work with Cal Fire on the other areas, restoring power fully to Napa. So that's in progress. Another piece of safety is people wanting to get home. We understand people want to get home. just to check on their house or to get home and get back to their closet full of clothes and take a shower. We get that. But it's super important right now that everybody comply with evacuation orders for a lot of good reasons. And to help me explain that, Chief Bierman. Thank you.
Good morning, Barry Bierman. I'm the Deputy Incident Commander with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3, as well as the Napa County Fire Chief. Currently, in the evacuation areas, we have a lot of devastation that's gone on. And as discussed here today, there are a lot of people, as we can understand, that want to get back in there. Our number one priority is the safety. It's the safety of the public and the people that are evacuated, the safety of our first responders. Before we can get anyone back into these areas, there's a process to ensure that safety, to repopulate. It's typical this time of an incident in some areas where we don't see smoke that understandably people want to get back in. However, it's not safe to do that until we can secure the utilities, the gas lines, ensure the trees aren't going to fall down on top of someone. So that area of repopulation is a process that we're already starting to work on. However, it is not as easy as one would hope to ensure that safety. So I ask that people please be patient as we work in these areas. The fires are still out there. They are still actively growing. We will be updating acreage and containment daily as we get that information. Resources still continue to be limited. We have folks on the fire line starting their third shift right now that have not been relieved because there's folks not available to come in with so many fires in the area. We are having to share resources as there are many priorities in the communities that are being affected by this. So everyone is working hard with not only trying to get people back into the areas that fire has gone through, but also the areas that still continue to have fire. We are still having active fire in all locations. We are unfortunately continuing to experience additional structure loss that happens due to the fire growth. The winds yesterday went from a northern wind to a southwestern wind in the evening and pushed the fire back in different directions on all the fires. Our team currently is overseeing the Partridge Fire, the Nuns Fire, and the Atlas Peak Fire. And so getting resources out there, protecting property and saving lives is still the priority, and working on perimeter control and defensive structures where applicable. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, I'd like to add one last thing that came up. Right now is a time on the incidents where people, if they can't get in, want to start using things like drones. We ask that you please refrain from any drone use in any fire areas. If you fly, we cannot fly our aircraft, and we have aircraft on all of our fires trying to contain these incidents. So please make sure that those drones do not go up. Thank you.
Additionally, from a safety and utility standpoint, if there are sewer backups or emergencies into your homes, we ask that you call 707-204-4347. That is an environmental health matter. So again, sewer backups into your home, call 707-204-4347. Of course, being able to share the most relevant and up-to-date information is what the EOC is tasked to do, and we know that that brings comfort to people, whether they're in the evacuation zones or not. We will continue round the clock to provide the most up-to-date information, and simply because someone is not getting that nixle message, it doesn't mean that the information isn't coming. It means that something has not changed. I will again reiterate those platforms that we're using to distribute the most current information, and that is the county's website. The county's website also includes fire incident maps as well, so you can check that out. We're using social media platforms of Facebook and Twitter. We're using Nixle. Nixle is our emergency mass communication system. It can be email or text based. To receive the alerts, you may text your zip code to 888-777, or you can go onto Nixle.com and sign up for the emails. Additionally, this service is available in Spanish by texting ESP and your zip code to 888-777. We're continuing to coordinate with our media partners, and we thank you all for being here today to be able to get the message out to our residents and to those that are concerned of our residents. The Napa County employees need to check in with their supervisors or their department heads to see if they are essential work staff for the day. Because of CHP's roadway advisories. Public information is available. We are staffing that phone line. It is general information only. To reiterate, we cannot give details about specific people. That number is 707-253-4501, and that's general public information. Again, I would like to reiterate that this remains a life safety fire event. We will continue to ensure and prioritize the safety of our residents. We will continue to maintain secure areas with the evacuation zones. We ask people to be mindful of their health. There is a lot of smoke in the air. If you're feeling ill, seek health care advice at our clinics. We are staffed up with medical clinics at the evacuation centers at Napa Valley College and at Crosswalk Community Church. And we ask people that they help each other. Please be mindful of your safety, of your neighbor's safety. To reiterate, we don't have any approximations of evacuees or the number of homes or structures. That's simply not where we're at. As soon as we have information, we will get it out there and we'll keep the residents and all those concerned informed. This concludes our press conference, and we will take questions at this time.
All right, guys, so that was the latest and really the most comprehensive press conference from earlier this morning about the situation in Napa County. Obviously, it's a pretty scary situation and pretty people are in dire straits there. And like we say at the bottom of the screen here, at least 13 are dead, 100 plus have been evacuated, and more than 1,500, about 1,600 businesses have been affected and evacuated. So they go on to kind of talk more, but you heard a lot of the numbers there and the details. And if you missed some of that, we did play this out live when it happened earlier. So this is a replay from this morning from Napa County officials. So quick live look, guys, inside the White House press briefing room. This is where the press briefing is about to happen. It was scheduled for 1:45, but obviously it's now 2 o'clock Eastern time. Usually these start a little bit late, as we were talking about with Ronica earlier. So this should come up soon. We're actually going to push it to our Facebook page, so join us there on Fox 5 DC on our Facebook page for this briefing. Sarah Sanders is expected to probably take a lot of questions about President Trump's recent tweets and a lot of the tweets, of course, about sports, about the Jamila Hill firing from ESPN or suspension rather, the NFL, of course, with the protests with the national anthem. So lots to be discussed here. This is a live look inside, and once again, you can catch that on our Facebook page. So with that, guys, we're going to continue more coverage from our digital newsroom tomorrow at 11:30. We'll see you guys then. Leave you with a live look at the White House today.